want to say publicly that I am tired of national government devising one rule for themselves and another for local government. I know this is that this is a view held by many, including Lord Porter, their former chair of the Local Government Association. As he put it so eloquently yesterday on a call, how is it possible and reasonable that I can sit and vote in the Lords, safe here in my home Lincolnshire, when councillors up and down the country are forced to meet together? Several of our members have not felt comfortable with attending tonight to protect themselves and vulnerable loved ones. This government is treating local government with contempt and should be ashamed of itself. Local democracy continued up and down the country with meetings held remotely during the pandemic, and I would urge government to move forwards with hybrid or remote meetings once more as soon as possible, so the voices of all residents can be heard. The Chief Exec has compiled an update on COVID numbers and our preparedness for the summer season, and I have asked him to circulate that to all members after this meeting, as we have a long agenda already. But if members would like to hear it now, I'm sure he would be happy to read it to you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Steve, do you wish to read that or not? Yep. Lovely. Thank you. Thank you. Question, item 8, public questions and statements. I don't believe we have any. Thank you. Moving on to item 9, the portfolio reports. So just as a reminder to everybody or those newer councillors, the session should last no more than 30 minutes in total. It is one question for the item of business. One question for the item of business, and second questions if we have enough time at the end, and that the questions should be of the Cabinet portfolio holders' reports in their areas, but this is not a debating section. So, first one is Councillor Fitch-Tillett for Coast. Thank you.
The report's before you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Fitch-Tillett? No. Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Fitch-Tillett. Second is Councillor Fredericks on housing and benefits.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening. The report is before you and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Councillor Fredericks? Thank you. Councillor Gay for leisure, wellbeing and culture, please.
Thank you, Chairman. You have the report, and I know that you will receive the June report by email. I would just like to say that on the 19th of July, we did have the first peer show. Lots of us were at it, and there were fulsome thanks given to the District Council. And yesterday was another nice occasion when we buried the time capsule for the new facility. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Gay? Councillor Kershaw, sustainable growth.
Thank you, Chair. My report is before you. I would just like to say that we're pleased to be able to confirm this evening that North Norfolk District Council has today received confirmation from the Department for Business, Energy and Industry and Strategy that we have been awarded a sum of £760,411 to the Additional Restrictions Grant Fund to further support the recovery of our business and the local economy. This amount represents a top up to the £3.02 million of discretionary grants that the council has already awarded this year, along to support local businesses impacted by COVID-19. This contributes to over now £126 million of grant support that the council has awarded to local business throughout the pandemic. We are presently aware of just one other local authority in Norfolk who has met the deadlines and qualifying criteria to receive this additional funding, which is a testament to the dedication, diligence and extremely hard work of those teams involved in supporting the grants process. Notwithstanding that this has been delivered during a period of extremely challenging times for the council, businesses and the local community, and without additional resource. To date, the ARG scheme has been predominantly focused on helping businesses to stay solvent during the lockdown periods. It is now our intention with these additional funds to shortly establish a programme of support, including a further grant scheme to help support the recovery process of local businesses and to help them become more resilient. I'm also pleased to announce that these efforts have been recognised at a national level with no less than 2 shortlisted positions for 2 prestigious awards. The Public Finance Awards 2021 for Digital Finance Project of the Year and the Institute of Revenue Ratings and Values 2021 Performance Awards for Excellence in Innovation. And I would like to thank the officers for their incredibly hard work. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Kershaw. Any questions? Councillor Fitzpatrick, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thanks for the reports. Good to see that money's going into recovery. Quite a lot about visitor economy, but I just wonder what's been done on the manufacturing base in North Norfolk, particularly manufacturing base in the west of the district, what contacts have been made, and how the portfolio thinks the health of that sector is being sustained through the pandemic, and indeed what contacts he's made over the past 15 months or so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kershaw.
Thank you. Yes, we had several visits to West Raynham Airfield. I think as Councillor Fitzpatrick was aware, we were going to put a bid forward. We're working with West Raynham and the film company there to bring a growing business to fruition and the possibility of a similar festival to the Hay Literary Festival. We have been working with firms in Fakenham, visiting them as much as we can under these conditions. And in fact, I think more time has been spent certainly with the community renewal grant and generally in the west of the area than I have been spending in the east at this time. And I'm pleased to say that we've found great cooperation there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kershaw.
Sorry, the thrust of my question was on manufacturing. Festivals are great, but I'm just particularly interested in your contacts with manufacturing and how you think the health of that sector is across the district, but particularly in the west, because, sorry, you haven't actually answered that. Thanks.
Manufacturing is having a difficult time, as you well know. We are having issues with labour, and as you're probably well aware, production is not being helped at the moment by the pandemic. This is something that we would like to try and help with. It's difficult. We are visiting, now that we're coming out of the grant part of the rescue, our team is now going out to see more and more businesses to look. We have, there are some marine businesses in the west. We are visiting more and more now, and they have not been particularly wanting to see us at the moment until this point in time, but we are taking that forward from this point. And as you know, I think we've had meetings with Equinor and the Egmere situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, can I just say, you haven't answered my question at all about manufacturing. I'm quite happy if you haven't done anything, but it's a specific one about the manufacturing base. You know, Equinor doesn't manufacture anything.
Councillor Fitzpatrick, I believe that Councillor Kershaw has answered your question. If you'd like a more detailed response, perhaps you'd like to email Councillor Kershaw for a full response on specific areas or people or businesses concerned. Thank you. Any further questions for Councillor Kershaw? Thank you. Moving on to Councillor Lloyd, Environmental Services, Climate Change and Environment.
Thank you, Chair. I just have 3 late entries to the report. One includes some good news. One of the environmental health's lesser known services is to check on private water supplies across the district, of which we have around 500. The Drinking Water Inspectorate published their Drinking Water 2020 report, and pleased to say Norfolk District Council got a positive mention in that report, which is a national report in actual fact, and we were singled out for praise. Pleased to open the innovative eco toilet in Weybourne last week, and for those who are interested, the goats go back on the cliff tomorrow, the Bagot Coats.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Lloyd? Councillor Mancini-Boyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our recycling rates are currently around 40%. What options are within our current waste contract to improve the council's carbon footprint? For example, changing to electrical vehicles, or indeed converting existing ones once it is a viable option? And are we putting infrastructure in place to facilitate this? Are we considering the collection of small electrical items? And have we considered asking for HVO fuel to be used? This has the effect of reducing emissions by 90%. Thank you.
Councillor Lloyd.
There's a few questions there. On the refuse trucks, around about 30% more efficient than the previous ones. The new trucks that are now all on the road have been purchased and are operational. They gain that carbon improvement through the use of electrically driven compactors rather than a separate diesel motor. We've been pushing Serco hard, and we included it actually in the contract to publish their carbon footprint, which they are now calculating for the first year of service to us. They've introduced several electric vehicles already. These are the smaller types for the guys that go around cleansing toilets and other areas around the district. And they're in the process of putting their own electric vehicle charging points in various locations around the district. They're also doing trials with conversions to electric refuse vehicles. These, I have to say, Councillor Mancini-Boyle, that in a district as wide as ours, the use of these type of vehicle, whilst desirable, are not always practical, because these vehicles have quite low ranges, so they work really well in a town like Glasgow or London or somewhere like that. But we have to think carefully about how we deploy them in a district the size of ours. But nevertheless, we're very much encouraged by Serco's moves in that area. And the third question, I can't quite remember.
The other part of my question, what I'm basically trying to get to is, ideally, we would be in 5 years' time, hopefully using some form of cell type driven unit, because as we all know, battery is not the greatest in the world. So ideally, what you would like to have is some form of cell type battery in and around, like the Cromas and the main towns, and hopefully the HVO fuel would be better used, because as I've said, it's 90% more efficient than diesel at the moment. And as other councils are going that way, the price will be coming down.
Could we have a succinct question, please?
I've just given you one. I'm just trying to, excuse me, Mr. Chair. I'm very passionate about the climate and what have you, and I'm only asking for 5 minutes of your time, just to give a bit of meat on the bone.
One question.
Thank you.
Chair, I'm happy to answer that question if you. So there are a range of technologies. There are, I've looked into this in a little bit of detail. Hydrogen powered vehicles seems to be a really good way forward. The problem is the ones that are on the road at the moment cost about £1 million a go, whereas ours cost around about 400,000. So there's a big cost implication there. We have written into the contracts lots of provisos about the future of carbon reductions for waste collections and their other services around our district. So as technology comes along, Serco have pledged to investigate and look at these things. I can't sit here today and guarantee you that we're going to have an electric fleet in 5 years' time, but we are working towards it. And they've done conversions from diesel to electric for using a single truck. Some of these are on the roads in urban areas that they work quite well.
I'm sorry, just the last little bit. I'm sorry, Chair.
Is this a supplementary question?
It's still a supplementary question to the question about just to give you a bit of information about these. What I meant by the small items is hair dryers, toasters, what have you. instead of people putting them in with their waste, they leave them out separately, and when the vehicle comes around, it's already separated. This makes them far easier to recycle. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can Councillor Lloyd tell me what is being done to support parishes to develop electric vehicle charging points? Thank you.
We've had interest from Cly and Blakeney, I believe, both of which are interested. I've provided information for them. We won't be installing those unless we can find a piece of land that we own in those villages. So, you know, we put them in our main car parks. The objective at the moment is to put them in locations where they will be most benefit to the public. If parish and village councils want to do that, we're happy to offer support, but they'll have to do it on their own. But there is the Sustainable Communities Fund, should they wish to make an application.
Thank you. Councillor Cushing, any further questions for Councillor Lloyd? Look, yes, Councillor Penfold.
It's just one question about the asking of questions, because you did say we were allowed to ask one question, not several questions all lumped together, which I'm afraid Councillor Mancini-Boyle did do, even though he said they were supplementary questions.
Yeah.
So I'm just seeking a bit of clarity, because it's quite, you know, to sneak several questions in to one portfolio holder.
Yeah,
it's not cricket.
Yeah, it should be one question per member during the portfolio holder reports. Sometimes there is a little bit of leeway if it's connected, but multiple questions are not one question. It should be limited to one question per member with the possibility of one follow-up supplementary question.
Councillor Penfold. Councillor Adams.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to ask Nigel if you could send my thanks to both Serco and the environmental contracts team for some of the tremendous work they've been doing in Cromer. I think, as you know, I had concerns about how prepared we were for the summer period, but I really think they're meeting that challenge currently. And you've been aware, you've seen some of the fantastic feedback we had last week.
Councillor Adams, is there a question?
I'm just asking him to send my thanks to both those services for the work they do.
Just very conscious we have 30 minutes for this item and we're a good way
No
through
problem.
that.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Councillor Seward, Finance and Assets.
Thank you, Chairman. Just three short updates. I refer to the 2021 final accounts. The draft accounts will be published as required at the end of this month. They will be on the council's website. The finance team are currently doing the final checks on those accounts, and I'm pleased to report to the council that for the financial year 2021 there will be a surplus. In other words, there's no deficit, there's no use of reserves, there will be a surplus. The second item I wish to report on is zero budgeting. The finance team have plans in place to commence the zero budgeting exercise in August. The overview and scrutiny committee asked through the chairman at their last meeting for a briefing on zero budgeting, and the finance team will be offering to do that briefing to them in the autumn. The third thing is there is reference in here to the council's work on business grants being shortlisted for an award. I can also report that today I was informed that we have also been shortlisted by the Institute of Revenue Rating and Valuation we've also been shortlisted for an award through the Institution of Revenue Rating and Valuations under the Excellence in Innovation Service Delivery category We are one of 5 authorities that have been shortlisted for an award in that area. And again, that reflects the excellent work that that team has been doing in terms of the distribution of business grants. Thank you, Chairman. And I'll
Thank you.
take any questions.
Any questions for Councillor Seawood? That's lovely. Thank you very much. Moving on to Councillor Shires.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's lovely to see everybody in person. I'm trying to remember to lean into my microphone. So if anybody can't hear me at the back, please do let me know. I'd like to draw members' attention to, it's actually a thank you to David Williams, who has left the customer services team. He has retired after a long career in public service, predating me by many, many years, and I would think predating a lot of the members here. So I would like to extend my thanks to David Williams for his time at the authority. I just want to make a couple of points highlighted in the report. As you will see, we have got a drop in calls to the dedicated COVID line. For comparison, the April 2020 figures were 2,790 calls to that line. The June 2021 figures were 164. So as you can see, there has been a drop in demand there. I also want to thank the customer services team for continuing to offer their overtime to assist the NHS in contacting patients to ensure that they are booking appointments for their vaccinations. Yeah, they're having a lot of success and they're chasing up people who are quite hard to reach. So, you know, big thanks to the team for giving up their free time to do that. A note that to support Councillor Frederick's domestic abuse forums, we do have the safe spaces on our website, which thanks to Sean Kelly for getting that up very quickly. That happened quite quickly. I was very happy with that. I want to welcome the About with Friends team to the building. Many of my colleagues know how delighted I am to be able to get proper coffee in the building. And they have been welcomed warmly and have expressed how much they're enjoying being part of our team. And the EVCPs, we do now have 34 in the district. When North Walsham goes live, there will be 40 in total. And the final point I wanted to mention was one that I'm particularly proud of. And I also know that Councillor Spagnola will be exceptionally proud of, is our accessibility rating for our website. We are currently 27th in the National Public Sector list, but we are the top council in the county as judged by Societim. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Societim. I hadn't thought it was that. I tried a number of variations, but I'm happy that it's Societim. And one more thing, just to mention the work that our digital mailroom team have been doing, where they have stepped up to support staff with their lateral flow testing. I know it's not a very pleasant job to do on yourself, and they've provided great support there. And also with the extra work they have done to bring the North Norfolk Visitor Centre webpage into a really prominent place. And they have been working really hard to create leaflets that go across the district, which you can download from the webpage. So a huge thanks to the team there. I won't carry on talking, but I will invite any questions.
Thank you. I believe Councillor Rest has a question.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, to the portfolio holder, please. On your report on page 38, halfway down, it says the Fakenham Community Centre, contract in place, start date to be confirmed with tenant. There are 3 ward members here from Fakenham and none of us know what that's about. Can you enlighten us?
I'm going to have to say I don't know. I don't deal with the tenancies under my portfolio. That would unfortunately come under the assets team. I can find out for you and make sure that all members are aware of what that is.
Please, if you could.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vardy.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, thank you for your report, Councillor Shires. Councillor Shires, Norfolk District Council has included in its corporate plan the objective of making this district carbon neutral by the year 2030. And animal agriculture is responsible for 14 to 80% of greenhouse gas emissions, more than the combined emissions from all forms of transportation. This council has recently published its new menu for our in-house cafe. Other than a plate of beans and a light salad, there's not one other item that's dairy or animal free. Most councils have recognised this fact and the impact animal agriculture is having on our climate. Councillor Shires, I wanted to know what level of governance was in place when agreeing this insensitive and inappropriate menu. Can we and I be reassured that someone will review this menu for the improvement of our carbon footprint and the health of our staff and members, and to show that we truly committed to the corporate plan? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vardy. I will invite you to join me in supporting that challenge to ensure that we are covering everything that we can possibly do to ensure we're meeting our climate challenges.
Can I ask just one more?
Is it supplementary to the?
Well, it's just to ask what you're going to do about reviewing the menu.
I'm inviting you, Councillor Vardy, to support me in reviewing the menu. I want to include you in the process, and I feel that your passion will help support that process.
Yes, happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Were there any more questions for Councillor Shires? Councillor Penfold.
Thank you. I'm here. It's behind you. So I just still thought I was at the Chroma show then. Just on page 39 refers to the North Walsham West consultation and initial feedback having come into us. I just wonder when we might, or that might be shared with us, because it'd be very interesting to see what has been said in response to those proposals. Thank you.
I feel rude not turning around, Councillor Penfold, so please excuse me not facing you. I will refer to Councillor John Toy, being that we create the platform, but we're not the planning process.
That's okay, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Penfold. Yeah, obviously there's a lot of data come in there, and officers are working through that data to form a view, and paper will be brought forward for you to see the results of that. Is that and obviously, you know, we will share that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, just to be kept in the loop, please.
Absolutely.
That I think very important to
absolutely
for all members. Thank you.
Any final questions for Councillor Shires, because I'm conscious of time or time window for this item. So finally, Councillor Toy for planning and enforcement.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, in conscious of the time, I will cut down just to say my report's before you. 2 points that I was going to highlight very briefly. You can see the on page 44, the developments that are coming along that will bring us affordable housing. And I think it's important to note that much of our development comes from smaller developments to give us small numbers of housing. Clearly, the big developments, as has been mentioned, North Walsham will be important in delivering that. And secondly, if I could just encourage members to note the Section 106 inquiries email that is now available. So if you have any inquiries about any Section 106 issues, please come through on that email and it will be addressed to the appropriate people. Thank you.
And are there any questions, very briefly? Councillor Mancini, you've already asked one question for tonight.
I'll be very brief.
No, I'm afraid you can't. You've already asked the question. If we get time, we'll come back for a second question, because there are councillors who haven't.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is about Section 106. How much Section 106 money does NDC hold? And what is the longest period that the funds were held for? Thank you.
I would have to say I do not have that information in front of me at this time, but I would be happy to get that information and send that through to you.
I would appreciate that. Thank
you.
Councillor Hayman.
Yes, there's a question for Councillor Toy, but also for two of his colleagues. In their reports to council this evening, they list in meetings attended parish council meetings, in addition to a range of internal meetings. I really think that that is an insult to the public and the public record of this council, that internal meetings or external meetings, which are not part of their portfolio and actually provide no useful management information to us as members and to the public, more importantly, that they desist for that. I would hesitate to say it, but I think it's probably true. But the reason that these meetings are listed is that actually there's nothing else happening in their portfolios and they aren't doing anything and they're just expanding information to try and look as if they're busy. The second, which is a supplementary question. Pardon?
Do you have a question for Councillor Toy rather than a statement?
Yes, which is, can we desist from having that level of information provided in future reports from himself and his colleagues? It was symptomatic when I was on Cabinet of the reports that were given on a weekly basis to the leader. They provide no useful management information and they are about looking busy and scoring points with each other. It is an insult to the public in that respect, and it is not useful information for the public record.
Yeah, Councillor Hayman, that your question seems around process rather than a question to the actual portfolio holder, whilst I understand what you're asking.
Sorry?
Your question seems more about process rather than an actual question around the plan and portfolio.
Well, it's actually part of his report, as it was indeed others. So I think the question is valid and I think it needs addressing and answering. He can answer it as to why it's there. That's the good question.
Councillor Toy, you have the right.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I include it in my report and I do write my reports. I know some people have officers assist them with it. I write my reports and I include that information so that people know that I'm engaging in all these different areas and filling my time as much as possible to understand with parish councils. By attending them, I found out what local people need. By planning team and case meetings, what's going on with the department I have a responsibility for, when I do external stuff about first homes webinars. And so I can bring all that knowledge to my portfolio and to this council. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. Right, okay. We have now run out of time. If you have any further questions for the portfolio holder or any of the portfolios, you obviously can email them through to them. Okay. We're now going to go back to item 1 on the presentation as Mr. Goff has now joined us on the meeting. Hopefully he's still with us.
Councillor Ponchard, can you hear us okay?
And it's now over to you to give your brief presentation about the Firefighters Charity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for listening to me this evening. My name is Eric Goff. I'm a group manager in Norfolk Fire and Rescue Service. My responsibility lies within the Central District based in Norwich. So I'm the district manager for Norwich and the slightly wider area as well. With me, I have Station Manager Sam Pick, who is responsible for protection within the central area. And we're also advocates, and I'm the coordinator for the Firefighters Charity for Norfolk Fire and Rescue Service. So thank you for inviting me to come and just very briefly give you some information about the Firefighters Charity. So firstly, I'd like to thank Councillor Punchard for nominating the charity. It's been a very, very difficult 18 months for the charity, as it has been for many, many charities raising money with their lockdown. So every penny counts for the Firefighters Charity, and every penny that is awarded to the charity is very, very much appreciated. So the Firefighters Charity supports thousands of firefighters and people within the firefighters community every year. And this is all over the country. So if you can imagine, several years ago, the firefighters who attended Grenfell in London, a lot of the firefighters that attended that incident needed an awful lot of support both mentally and physically. And the Firefighters Charity is one of those organisations that steps forward to help those firefighters and helps them get them back to work. But what does it actually mean for us in Norfolk as a fire and rescue service? Well, Norfolk has about 850 firefighters working in the county, and they're on a mixture of duty systems. But each and every one of those firefighters and the control room staff as well are exposed to a whole range of different scenes and scenarios, as I'm sure you can imagine. And this is on a daily basis. The charity will receive from Norfolk in the region of 50 to 100 firefighters every year from Norfolk. And there's no government funding at all, so it's heavily dependent on people giving money to the charity to be able to support the firefighters in Norfolk as well as across the country. If we can get firefighters back to work because they've suffered a physical or mental injury, it means that they can get back onto station quicker, which means that they can support the communities of Norfolk an awful lot quicker as well. And that's something that I'm particularly passionate about, is helping the firefighters to help the communities to keep people safe. The Firefighters Charity has 3 centres across the country, and there's a mixture from the north of England through to the south of England. And these 3 centres need in the region of £10 million a year to be able to function and to support the firefighter community with their things like rehabilitation, physical rehabilitation, mental health support, and general living and social well-being. We in Norfolk, we hold several events every year to try and raise money, which Councillor Punchard also supports. Very appreciative to that. We've got an event running now on the 31st of July, which is a motorcycle ride, which you may have heard about on social media. That's firefighters across Norfolk and other brigades as well will be moving around the perimeter of the county, raising money on their motorcycles to raise money for the charity as well. We've also got a very exciting, innovative and unique project running, which is called Ashes to Art. So firefighters have donated their old fire helmets, and they will be painted by either professional aspiring artists as well as some schools, and then they will be auctioned off later on this year, also to try and raise money for the charity. I'd just like to ask Station Manager Sam Pick just to say a few words really about the benefits of the charity, as he's received some of the treatments, and he can give you a small case study if that's okay. Thank you.
Good evening, councillors. Thank you. I'll be very brief, but I've been asked to talk about the charity and what it actually does in regards to rehabilitation. I've been in Norfolk Fire and Rescue Service for 23 years, and I firmly believe that I am in this job still now after an injury I received in 2002, and that is solely down to, or not solely, but heavily down to the assistance I received from the Firefighters Charity. In 2002, I was involved in an accident where my leg was basically shattered, and I had to undergo 5 operations to repair it, and I still have steel and metal rods in my leg at this moment. I went to our Jubilee House Rehabilitation Centre on 3 separate occasions because I was actually struggling to remain in the service because my leg wasn't repairing. I fully believe that the help, the assistance that I received at Jubilee House has enabled me to remain in the fire service, and 19 years later, still with a little bit of a sore leg, I'm still able to carry out my duties, and I've had a full and career within the service, and I can only sing the praise of the charity enough. I'd like to thank you, councillors, for helping and supporting our charity. It really is greatly appreciated, and I continue myself to support the charity in any way I can, carrying out events, cycling to Paris, car washes, buckets, supermarkets. So thank you very much for your assistance and your support.
So that's it from us from Norfolk Fire and Rescue Service, and if you've got any questions, we'll be happy to take them. Thank you very much indeed for your support. Thank you, Councillor Pranchard.
Any questions for Mr. Goff at all? No. Oh, Councillor Toy.
No. Excuse me, not a question, but a great thank you to them for the work that they do, all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Goff. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but please feel free to.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So yeah, just to put into context what Mr. Goff said, there will be several events around the district over the next year, which hopefully us as councillors will be able to support. One is the bike ride, where they'll be making a stop off. They've got permission to use the pier on the 31st of July. So they'll be there rattling some buckets to try and raise some money. And there'll be car washers and all sorts of things. And there may even be an event where some councillors might like to drive a fire engine for the day. Councillor Grove Jones. Moving on. Item 10 on the agenda, which is recommendations from Cabinet. I shall move to Councillor Buttigieg. Thank you.
Thank you. This item is actually being presented by Councillor Seward. Thank you.
Apologies.
That's all right.
Councillor Seward.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll be very brief. The resolution for this council to approve tonight is in front of you to recommend to full council the formal adoption of its equality objectives and the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Policy 2021. I note that the recommendation was supported by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 16th of June, and no doubt the chair through that committee will say something should he wish to add. It's been some time coming, nevertheless, between scrutiny, the Cabinet, back to scrutiny and now to full council, I think we've now got it there, and therefore I formally move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Seward. I would wholeheartedly support this recommendation. Having to undertake this work in my primary employment, right, in equality and diversity strategies, it's no easy piece of work, but it's been done very well. Would the Chairman of Overview and Scrutiny like to say? Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In relation to that last item on the Community Renewal Fund, the meeting had no, it supported the recommendations. I had no variations of that.
Councillor Dixon, we were on the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion policy at this moment in time.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Yes,
yeah, that's fine. Thank you. So do we have a proposer? Councillor Seward, seconder? Councillor Fredericks? Are we all in favour? Happy for a show of hands? Any against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. And the second part is agenda item 8, which is the housing strategy. Is that Councillor Buttigieg or Councillor Toy? Oh, Councillor Fredericks. Get there in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I have moved before you the housing strategy for 2021 and 2025. This work was undertaken with the collaboration of many of our stakeholders, registered providers and parish councils and officers and members and housing associations and landlords. So I produce this, I move this strategy to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a proposer. Do we have a seconder? Oh. Councillor Toy. Lovely. Show of hands, all in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Eight. Eight. Thank you. Agenda item 9, which is the Community Renewal Fund. I'm not sure who's talking on this one. Councillor Kershaw.
Thank you, Chair. I commend this item to full council. I'd also like to commend the work done by officers in a very tight timescale, and it was very refreshing to see that this was carried out cross-party with the help of MPs and to the west and to the east of the district. I'm aware of the fact that the overview and scrutiny committee meeting took place after the agenda for full council was published, so I'd welcome any comments from the chair of overview and scrutiny. Thank you.
Councillor Dixon, thank you. Try again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, you've already heard from me on this one, so I have nothing more to add.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Kershaw? So we have a proposer, Councillor Kershaw. We have a Councillor Rest is seconded. Do you wish to? Yep, lovely. Thank you. Show of hands again. Those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Lovely. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to item 11, which is recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, 16th of June 2021. Move to Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this matter relates to the annual report, which you will notice covers 2019/20 and 2021. So we've got 2 years in one here. The report resolved to recommend that council notes the annual report and affirms the work of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and considers the following concerns raised within the report. And there are 3 of them. Firstly, additional committee substitutes required to adequately address the number of apologies given. Over the course of those 2 years, there have been various times when apologies have been given, but substitutes have not been able to attend, and that has weakened the extent to which the committee has been able to cover its work. So this requires, I think, the full council approval to up that number of substitutes. The next recommendation concerns the late submission of reports has caused ongoing volatility in the work programme. And this is one for full council, hopefully to support, but I think that will be for CLT to action that. And lastly, the third recommendation is in respect of better communications or business planning required to maintain work programme stability. So this is for full council to support, and I would suggest a combined effort here between Cabinet and the CLT in order to perhaps enhance the way in which the work programme flows. The committee would certainly appreciate that. So those are the 3 points that I need to bring to your attention, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Known to the nature of what's in those, I think we should take a vote on this item to receive it. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Dixon's obviously proposed this report. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Cushing, thank you. And can we take a vote? A show of hands. Those in favour of receiving the report and the actions within it? Those against? Any abstentions? 1 abstention. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for that. Item 12 on the agenda, which is recommendations from the Employee and Appeals Committee. I believe Councillor Seward is going to speak on this one.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The members of the council, the recommendation is in front of you, is to approve the appointment of the Director of Place and Climate Change and the Director of Communities, and I thereby move that recommendation.
Thank you. Owing to the importance of these roles within the council, could I ask that we vote separately on both positions? Are you happy with that, Councillor Seward? Thank you. So we have a proposal for Councillor Seward. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Toy? No. Councillor Kershaw, sorry. So we will vote on the appointment on Director of Place and Climate Change first. Those in favour, we have with a show of hands. And those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. And secondary is the Director of Communities. Do we have a proposer? Councillor Seward, and a seconder, Councillor Kershaw. And those in favour, show of hands. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you, everybody. Item 13 on the agenda, which is pages 115, which is the Constitution Working Party. I believe that's Councillor Gay.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it is. You have before you this evening 4 recommendations from the Constitution Working Party. That's unusual that we bring so much before you. The first 2 arose from a meeting in April, the second 2 from a meeting in June. As you know, the group meets rarely and we don't make decisions. And with your permission, Chairman, I would rather take these recommendations one by one.
That's fine.
Thank you. The first is straightforward here. It's to approve the revised member officer protocol. We agreed unanimously that this should be done. The Standards Committee has also supported approval. This new protocol is a little longer than the old protocol, but it makes it far more explicit what officers and members may expect of one another, and I propose that we approve it.
Thank you. So we have a proposer for the member officer protocol. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Tom Fitzpatrick, are you seconded? Yeah, lovely. And so if we can go to a vote on that item, if we're happy with the show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? Okay, so that's agenda item 5 carried. Thank you. Councillor Gay.
The second recommendation from our April meeting, Chairman, is that we include a dispute resolution within the Constitution to provide for a circumstance in which there is a disagreement between a chief officer and an elected member, usually a cabinet member, about the exercise of a delegated power. I'd just like to say here that this is, as far as I know, a hypothetical situation. It was requested by our auditors, who noted that we had no such dispute resolution procedure within the Constitution, and they asked that this be addressed. So for the interest of clarity, I'd suggest that we adopt this tonight, and I'm proposing it. Thank you.
Do we have a second? Councillor Rojo. And vote, please. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstention? Thank you. So we're now moving on to the meeting of the 20th of June, agenda item 5. Please, Councillor Gay.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. That's our third item tonight and the first from the June meeting. This concerns portfolio holder reports and the way in which they are treated at full council. As we've seen tonight, this is a slightly fraught matter. I have to say that I do have reservations about this item that's come before you as it stands. It has implications for the length of our meetings, and there are also a range of other options which we might explore and which I think do deserve to be explored at greater length. So I would suggest tonight that we defer this item for further reflection, and that's what I'm proposing. Thank you, Chairman.
Do we have a seconder for deferral of the item? Councillor Booty-Cofer. Are we all in favour of deferral? Take a vote on the deferral of the item. Those against? Any abstentions? Yeah.
So there is a proposal from the working party, and I'd have thought, no offence to Councillor Gay, for whom I have a great deal of respect, but I'd have thought maybe the members of the working group should have been notified of the possibility of the deferral.
Sorry, is your question whether you should have been notified in advance?
Yeah, please, because it was we've had 2 working groups since the last full council, and that was a unanimous recommendation by the working group. And I'm just surprised that it's not, and obviously Councillor Gay has good reason, but I'd have thought it should have been flagged up to the working group members first.
I think Councillor Gay may have wanted to add something before I respond.
I would just say I apologise for that. My view was that I wasn't taking any decisions. I was just putting a possibility before you this evening. That was what it was. That's how it came about, and I am sorry if that's caused annoyance and inconvenience.
Councillor Fitzpatrick, we could in effect treat this as an amendment to a motional recommendation.
Yeah,
and then vote.
that's fine. It's just the we are the constitutional working group, and it's quite good to follow the thing
Well,
through.
we've
That's
taken
all.
those.
But I'm quite happy with the votes taken. I was just flagging it up maybe for the future.
Okay.
Thanks.
Fair enough.
Thank
Thank you, Chairman.
I think we've covered that item then. Yeah. Councillor Gay, agenda item 6 on that.
Yeah, the last item on this is the 2nd June recommendation. And this, I think, is perhaps the most important and most urgent of the proposals coming for you. There are several points here, and again, they derive from audit reports. The recommendation here first is that the wording of the exemptions form is made absolutely explicit, that all forms are signed by a Section 151 officer, that work should never begin until an exemption form has been properly completed, unless there is an emergency, and there are very precise provisions for emergency, and it's suggested that it has to be done as quickly as possible, even in the state of an emergency. We also added in this case, in addition to feeling very strongly that the Section 151 officer should sign these papers, we were also concerned about the reporting, and we have proposed here that exemptions are reported to the audit committee and they are published quarterly on the council's website. This was most definitely a unanimous recommendation from the working party. And as I say, I think it is the most urgent and important of these proposals tonight. Thank you, Chairman. I'm proposing it.
Thank you. And before we propose and second, I'd just like to bring in the Chairman of Government Risk and Audit, because I believe this has gone through that committee as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just to endorse what Councillor Gay has said, that this was discussed. It was originally came up through the internal auditors, so the whole process has gone through what we needed. We've had various discussions about it, and it has been agreed at the GRAC committee that we will be more than willing to see these reports much more often and report accordingly. Thank you.
So we have a proposal from Councillor Gay. Do we have a second? Councillor Fitzpatrick. Yeah, thank you. And show of hands for vote, please. Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for that one. Thank you, Councillor Gay. Moving to item 14, Councillor Blathwaite.
Hello, councillors. Just to say that this is in front of you. You have had a chance to read it. It's a sensible proposal. It was unanimously agreed by the Standards Committee, and I recommend it for agreement. Thank you.
It seems fairly straightforward, and I would support seconding that. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Ress.
Chairman, I note on the report it says that the guidance of the Model Code of Conduct is expected imminently. Do we have a date?
Sorry, we now have that. That's been published. Has been published very recently, and I can arrange for copies to be sent to you.
It has been sent to
Has been
members. I emailed it last week, but I can issue hard copies if you want. Councillor.
Any further questions? So we have a proposal. Oh, sorry, it's Tom.
Yeah, thanks. Just a quick one. When we discussed this at the Constitution Working Group, I think there was a request that when it came to council, it should be numbered within normal North Norfolk District Council way. It's slightly hard to follow, I think, but if we could maybe for the future look at numbering it properly so that it's easy for councillors to follow and refer to. But otherwise, I'm more.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. So if we can go to the vote now, those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you, everybody. Item 15, which is the community governance reviews. Councillor Butikoff, Sarah.
Thank you. Council will be aware that work started in February with the notice of reviews being published and initial engagement work commenced in consultation with stakeholders. As you can see from the attached report, each of the initial proposals and consultation results have been summarised. Wherever possible, concerns or issues raised by respondents have been addressed. But we are now about to move to the stage 2 consultation, and this is not a fait accompli, so if people still have concerns, they should raise them during that process. So I would therefore propose that we move to the second stage of consultation.
Thank you. We have a proposer. Do we have a seconder? Oh, sorry, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Tom.
Yeah. Sculthorpe comes under my district board. Slightly unusually, the area affected in Fakenham comes under my county division, but I do note on page 183, section 2.2, first bullet point, it says that 16 responses were received, 6 in favour and 10 against, but the proposal is to move forward. When people approached me, I explained to them the importance, if they had concerns, to respond to the consultation. But if anyone comes to me, I think as we're now moving forward, I think they're liable to say what was the point of responding to that. And I would just because it's effectively sort of close on a third, 2/3 against and 1/3 in favour. And it is important that we speak to local people, and it is important, even more important, that we listen. And I just wonder what response the leader would tell me I should give to local residents who will come and say they've been ignored.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Councillor Butikoff.
Thank you very much. Well, this is, as I've said, a consultation, and that's why we're not giving them a fait accompli at this time. We're going back out with a second consultation. And so I would urge them to respond again, and we will make every effort that we can to try and bring their concerns to fruition in the responses. As you will see, we have got a couple of proposals that have been put forward, and I'm very happy to talk to you or their representatives to look at their proposals.
Thank you for that. I'm quite happy with that response. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor.
Hi, I appreciate what Councillor Butikoff just said about it being the first stage of the consultation, and it's not a fait accompli. But I did want to note that I am concerned about the changes in the boundary between Sheringham and Upper Sheringham to move a new development from Upper Sheringham Parish to Sheringham Parish. Both I and Upper Sheringham Parish Council were against these proposals. We're generally concerned about the reduction in the parish of Upper Sheringham. So while I appreciate that it is just the first stage in the consultation, I remain concerned about that. It's difficult for me to support them at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very relieved to hear that there is going to be another bite at the cherry, if you like. Obviously, one of my parishes is Northreps, and I have already written in my particular feelings about this, but I'm very glad that there's going to be further consultation And believe you me, I shall be ringing my little bell around the village and making sure that they all put their thoughts in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions? No. So we're going to vote on the recommendation, which is to go to the second. We have a proposer. Did we have a seconder? Councillor Kershaw. And can I take a vote for those in favour of going to the second round consultation? Those against? And one against, and any abstentions? Thank you, everybody, for that. Moving on, questions received from members. I don't believe we've got any received. No, thank you. So on to opposition business. You've all read the opposition business has been proposed. So we'll move this through this fairly succinctly. The Councillor Cushing may begin the item as it's his proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since the inception of this council in 1974, the annual AGM has traditionally been a non-partisan event. There's been an opportunity to bring all councillors together to celebrate the distinguished service of the outgoing chairman and celebrate the election of a new chairman and deputy. Councillor Butikofer chose to disregard this by politicising the event by delivering a long State of the Union address about the perceived accomplishments of her administration. It goes against 46 years of tradition in this council and is against the whole nature of the AGM. It's also against the ethos of democracy because I, as leader of the opposition, have had no opportunity to reply to her statement. So the first recommendation is to seek to return the AGM to what it should be, which is a non-partisan event which helps bring us all together. Three other recommendations are made by way of response to what the leader of the council said in order to rebalance the record. This administration is process focused and kicks all the difficult cans down the road. It's devoid of any game-changing ideas to meet future challenges. It lacks plans and any savings to generate growth. The council's own forecasts show an anticipated shortfall of many millions in years to come. Now, I've pointed this out to Councillor Seawood on many occasions. I get the same old reply. I've been a councillor since Adam was a lad. They always show there's going to be a deficit in years to come. Don't worry about it. It's not the point. A dynamic council should strive to find savings and have a plethora of ideas to generate income, but not this Liberal Democrat regime. And after 2 years, there's absolutely nothing in the pipeline. This regime is a stark contrast to the dynamic Conservative councils in Norfolk, which have plans to meet their immediate and long-term needs. Well, I'll give you an excellent example in the neighbouring Great Yarmouth Borough Council, which is led by Councillor Carl Smith. He says the key is to shape projects when funding becomes available, you can bid for grants, and they've been incredibly successful in doing so. And I'll just list for those who ever laughed about that, what they've done. £120 million for the Third River Crossing, £18 million for the offshore and maintenance campus, £20 million for the town deal funding to support economic regeneration, nearly £13 million for the Future High Street Fund to deliver a new covered marketplace, £26 million for a new leisure and wellbeing fitness centre at the heart of the Golden Mile, and there are several more. There are other many smaller grants they've achieved. So in the past 12 months, they've seen an investment of over £220 million into the borough through the government and through their own investment. Now, I met Councillor Smith to discuss some of this, and I had to say he was absolutely fizzing with energy and enthusiasm about his vision for Great Yarmouth, what he wants his administration to achieve. And I have to say, I believe even the most ardent supporters of Councillor Butikofer and her administration wouldn't claim that her team was exactly fizzing with energy really about anything. Now, I do accept that Great Yarmouth is a different council to North Norfolk in some respects, but I could equally use examples of neighbouring Broadland or South Norfolk. I have to say, look at the administration's efforts, they're paltry by comparison. Come to the corporate plan. Not surprised, I mean, it took 9 months to actually get a corporate plan in the first place. 95 actions I counted in there, of which 71 are process driven, which means they deliver no outcomes. And for examples, they begin with words like formulate, identify, analyze, investigate, explore, nurture, review, monitor, baseline, engage, assess. When 75% of your corporate plan is made of woolly words like that, it's hardly surprising you're delivering so little. Good corporate plans should have measurable outcomes and which can be measured. And if you want to do a really good one, look at the Broad and the South Norfolk one online. Absolutely superb. We have a large degree of dysfunction in the council. We had the capability review, which created an awful lot of avoidable cost in terms of lost productivity, and that's still carrying on, which created a lot of needless toxicity. We have cabinet members who are not on top of their briefs. And I have to say, to be fair, there are some that certainly do, and I'd include Councillor Fitztillett and Gay. They're always on top of their briefs and inside out, back to front, but many don't. We have asked some questions in these councils, and the usual standard answers, I don't know, I'll have to go and ask the officer. Also often seeing absolutely clueless about their briefs as well. And also looking at cabinet changes that we've had recently. And there's a prerequisite for that seems to be joining the cabinet is a blind devotion to Councillor Butikofer as opposed to being based on ability. That's weak leadership. Strong leaders are not afraid to appoint the best in their team. And some of us are really bemused by some of the people that have been ejected from her cabinet and those who have been replaced. But blind obedience seemed to be order of the day. And then we come to secrecy. Now, we've had a little example this evening of a change of strategy, but we weren't informed about it. And we have lots of examples of that. We go to the ill-fated capability review. The last page of that was not circulated. And it's only when obviously there's a gap on that admission that that came from.
Councillor Cushing, you have 5 minutes and you have 1 minute left if you'd like
I
to sort
will
of wrap up.
speed on, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for prompting me on that. I'm nearly there anyway, you'll be pleased to know. If I go further, also in many of the things that we hear announcements in the press, council tax increase. I found out looking on the EDP, the future of the Cedars at North Walsham and Fairmeadow House at Itchingham. Again, we weren't told as members about that. Tucking the medium-term financial strategy into a paragraph in the revenue budget, hoping we wouldn't notice. All around is in summary, Mr. Chairman, it's just so much there you can go for. A council should be run like, cannot be run like a business, but it should at least be business-like. There seems to be endless drift with no desire to do much other than renovate the centre of North Walsham and plant a number of trees. I don't really honestly see the point of what's the point really having power if you really don't want to know what you want to do with it.
Thank you, Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've done it.
Moving on to Councillor Dixon as the seconder of this item. Councillor Dixon, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to second this motion and reserve my right to respond at the end of the debate, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Dixon. We'll now move to opposition group leader. Obviously, Councillor Cushing's already spoke. Councillor Rest, do you have anything to say for the independent group?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I have very few words to say, just some sort of headlines, if you like. I'd use words like glass houses, stones, cabinet appointments for favours. I'm not going to say any more. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move to Councillor Butikofer. And after that, we'll move to open debate. But just to remind all members, we have a total of 30 minutes for this item. Thank you. Councillor Butikofer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I have to say I'm grateful to Councillor Cushing for elucidating further on this item of opposition business. So, the Conservative opposition proposed the annual general meeting of council should be ceremonial only in nature and that no political statements will be allowed in future. May I please refer him to the North Norfolk District Council Constitution 2020, page 17. Whilst I don't propose to read through it, I would point out the vast majority of the business we do is, whether we like it or not, political, which is fairly unsurprising given the nature and the definition of the work we do. Those of us who have sat in this chamber long enough will recall that on one occasion, there was in fact a very political debate over the election of the chairman, which I would suggest is far more unusual and political than a council leader reporting back to their residents. In fact, if you consult the Constitution once more, page 192, the leader is required to keep council informed of progress in implementing its priorities. Everything stated in my report that night was based on fact. May I suggest that if the opposition wish to pursue this further, they take it through the appropriate channel of this council, which is open to them, and ask the chair of the Constitution Working Party if they can consider the matter further at their next meeting. Moving on, considering the list of achievements we demonstrated at the last meeting of full council, I'm a little surprised he wishes to be reminded of the myriad clean-up jobs we have had to do following his party's loss of control of this local authority, or of the delivery of projects against our manifesto pledges we have made. I refer him to last month's report and tell him and his colleagues once again, I am proud of the record of this council and the teams that work with us to deliver for North Norfolk residents. And I believe he should be too. Just tonight, we have heard that by working across departments and with members, this council has been nominated for 2 national awards during a pandemic. I'm sure some of my cabinet members will update him further. Regarding governance, I think we have again tonight demonstrated that we're continually striving to improve the governance of this organisation. It would be fair to say that when we took over control of this council, there were some procedural areas that concerned us, and we have worked with officers and our auditors to address these. In case anyone is not sure what our deliverables are, I refer them to the corporate plan and in-phase reporting system. Quarterly reports go to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for their information and detailed examination in this regard. Where they or the GRAC committee have concerns or areas of interest, they can and do ask for further information, which is always provided. However, I am pleased to tell him that following a design meeting last week, we will shortly be displaying the corporate plan in reception with an easy to follow traffic light code against line items, so everyone will have a very visual aid to progress. So now we move to the last part of this item, asking that we govern in an open and transparent manner. Can I first just correct you on something? You said that people were chosen by me to be on the cabinet. We actually hold group elections. No one is chosen by me to be on the cabinet, and I am elected by my members, as is my deputy. So I'm sorry, but that is not correct. And those were taken by online poll this year. So, considering the Conservatives' national record in this area and previous responses by the mover of this motion, the irony of this request has frankly staggered me. Just tonight, we've received the annual report of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and its terms of reference are on page 100 of this agenda. I believe that this gives them, as cross-party representatives of this council, every opportunity to review and comment on any aspect of this council's work. Indeed, as can be seen from the report, Cabinet and full council pay a great deal of regard to the work undertaken by that committee and seek to include as many of their recommendations as possible in future plans and policy. Furthermore, within that report, we heard how the committee and indeed all councillors, as their meetings are open to all, undertook pre-scrutiny of 5 items during this report, including the first ever at this authority of the corporate plan.
Councillor Booster, if you have 1 minute. Then.
Yeah, that's fine, thank you. Since the writing of that report, further policies and projects have gone through this system. When major projects are reported on, such as the HAS, which has brought major investment to this authority, they have included details of the financials and timelines. At the start of this pandemic, I telephoned the leaders of both political parties' opposition and asked them to join the gold meetings of this council. These meetings are perhaps some of the most sensitive any council can hold and are the forum where emergencies such as a pandemic are reported on, solutions sought and planning is undertaken. The leader of the opposition told me he preferred to hold the administration to account. That's not politics. I don't know what is.
Councillor Booster, time is up.
The mover of this motion has been asked to attend full meetings of council business, but has not taken up the invitation.
Thank you. Right, we'll now move around to open session. Councillor Sewell just signalled that he'd like to speak. Councillor Sewell, do you have a maximum of 5 minutes, but just conscious that we have a maximum of 30 minutes for the item, and I'd like all councillors to be given an opportunity if they wish to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I just say, first of all, it is completely impractical for an annual meeting of the council to be purely ceremonial. It talks about the appointment not only of the chair, but of the leader. By definition, that is political. it talks about other appointments. By definition, that is political. And if you go to the Conservative run County Council, if you look at their agenda, their meeting in May, you will find they had the ceremonial bit where they elected the chairman, and then they got down to normal business, which was political answers to leaders, questions to leaders of the council, and also motions. It's really much about when we're in power, do one thing. When we're in opposition, we want you to do something different. That really is what they're saying to us. Second thing is that in terms of openness and transparency, if you actually look at the overview and scrutiny report, it says both in 1920 and 2021, the majority of the recommendations which they made were accepted by the cabinet. If that isn't open and transparency and good scrutiny, I don't know what is. The third thing, in terms of we've been accused of not showing any dynamism or enthusiasm. Well, Councillor Cushing, please come and join me in North Walsham with my colleagues. We're dancing up and down. We're enthusiastic about the HAS programme. We can't be any happier, and we're determined to get it through. I am absolutely fizzing about it. I'm enthusiastic about it, and I want it to be successful. And indeed, if we're talking about creative thinking, by definition, that is creative thinking, because that's about improving the environment of the town where I live, where I do my shopping, or even go in the local pubs, and which I'm absolutely love and enthusiastic about. But then we're not just talking about creative thinking there. If you look at the environment, we're the only climate change council in Norfolk. We have a budget of £300,000. We have 2 officers devoted to it, 20,000 trees planted, another 50 or 60,000 to come this year. If that isn't answering and dealing with the needs of our residents moving forward, I don't actually know what is. And then if you say, what have we actually already done? We're one of the few councils, for goodness sake, that's opening a new swimming pool in Sheringham. We've paid out £126 million in business grants. We've been thanked by government ministers, and we've actually now being nominated for rewards. And if you look at Cromer, I'm clearing up at the moment empty, dilapidated sites in that town as a prime tourist area. The leases are now out on the mobile and slow toilets. There were also leases out to deal with the tennis courts.
1 minute
Mr.
left,
Chairman,
councillors.
that is just a few of the things we're done. We're clear about the objectives. The timescales have been listed out if anybody wants to read them. This motion is all puff and no substance.
Any other councillors? Thank you, Councillor Seward. Any other councillors wishing to speak? Councillor Penfold and then Councillor Hayden. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I do want to know what Councillor Cushing's got against trees. It's at least the second time he's scoffed at the tree planting scheme, so that slightly worries me. In terms of demonstrating dynamism, creative thinking and leadership to tackle North Norfolk's immediate and long-term needs, the declaration of a climate emergency in April 2019 was absolutely what that was about. That's one of the fundamental issues that faces us today, and that is about tackling our immediate and long-term needs. We were the first council in Norfolk to do so. When I attended Norfolk County Council in May this year, there was a green motion to declare a climate emergency, and that was voted down, which was appalling. The Heritage Action Zone we've already spoken about. Fantastic work going on there in North Walsham. We should be very, very proud of that. Councillor Cushing, you sat in overview and scrutiny and applauded that project, so you shouldn't scoff at it now. We're building more affordable houses than we ever have done before, 183 planned for 2021-22. So I would just say, to answer your own questions in 2, 3 and 4, what I suggest you do is to track back to May 2019, download every portfolio holders report that we've given since then, because you'll learn quite a lot through those. You'll answer your own questions, take them for some summer holiday beach reading, hopefully in Munsley. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hayman.
Thank you. This administration needs to up its game. It's a do nothing and wait and see what happens administration, rather than one that's trying to deliver on its election promises. There is no clear direction provided by the leadership, despite what's been said here this evening. Interestingly, this administration has approved this evening a call for greater openness and adherence to the Nolan principles enshrined in that. But in my time in cabinet, this openness was very little in evidence and surely goes against those Nolan principles. Decisions appear to be taken by a small cabal. And when I've asked for information regarding a range of matters, I was told by the leader that information I requested was not available to share. This is a disgraceful situation for the public authority and for the treatment of cabinet members by the leader, and not surprisingly led to poor decision-making and policy drift. This administration needs a rocket up its backside and to get a move on with delivery. It's not good enough to sit there and hide behind the work that officers do and would have done anyway. The examples that have been given this evening are all things that have been an officer initiated. They have not been initiated by this administration, by its leadership. So my question is, when is this administration going to start to deliver on its manifesto promises?
Councillor Haven, Councillor Gay.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to say that in 2019, when there was a decision to continue with the Sheringham Leisure Centre in this room to allot more money to it, not everybody in this room voted for that, but we did. And 2 members of our cabinet also proposed that it go to overview and scrutiny on a regular basis. So it seems to me that those 2 things indicate a desire to do something for our residents for the future and to do it in an open manner. And I think if you check the minutes for that meeting in July, I don't think I'm wrong. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Gay. Any more questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I feel I should address this because it says the leader in the cabinet, but I will try and reduce it because I'm respectful of the time, but I did have a considerable amount to say. Thank you. But I would like to point out that several things. Firstly, this, the opposition, all they want to do is oppose and be in power. It was said tonight about being in power and about being in opposition. That's all they want to do. They're not engaged with the processes that are going on. They talk about vigorous activity and progress. Councillor Seawards mentioned stuff, Councillor Gay's mentioned stuff. We've had stuff from business, all the environment, housing, business, comms strategy, well-being and planning and so on that has changed and moved on. We've delivered zero carbon affordable rent houses. I have other ethical builders interested, and I welcome early engagement with any other builders that wish to enjoy this work that we're doing. We know that affordable rent houses are needed, most, but government has introduced, and this is their party, a low-cost ownership scheme where we would lose 25%. So, for example, in Walcott, we would lose 4 houses to a low-cost ownership scheme that nobody wants. We should be able to decide locally. In terms of leadership, as has been explained, we are voted in, we're not liked in. And I would like to remind members, in terms of we don't have a whip and we make our own decisions. I was reminded in this chamber and asked why I voted against the application for the 950 houses in Fakenham. We were told the people of Fakenham will remember. I explained my reasons as for affordable homes and environmental deliveries. We have pursued bids with the officers for extra funding to increase viability. And so maybe the people of Fakenham might like to remember that we now will more likely deliver 10 more affordable homes. They tell us that we should meet North Norfolk's immediate and long-term needs. They are, according to them. We've done it all by consultation and taking surveys and getting the information and pulling it together. So yes, that may take a little time, but at least it's on data. And so we've based our delivery on that. I'm trying to cut this down, Mr. Chairman, so please bear with me. So In terms of openness, I've recently started discussing with cabinet members about whether we can actually really are doing the best thing to do with second homes. And I've copied the chair and the vice chair of Overgrown Scrutiny into that conversation so they're aware of our thinking. How more open can I be? I think we're doing everything. I believe this opposition needs to look at the evidence, which is available to everyone and seen by scrutiny committees. They will see it as clear. We are delivering. We have a plan. We have strategies. You've had a strategy come to you this evening. Okay, I do not believe it is in the best interest of the people of North Norfolk for this administration to waste time reproducing what is clearly already evident and in the public domain. We would rather get on with meaningful work as laid out in those clearly defined plans and strategies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I do have other councillors wish to speak, but just to remind you, we have 5 minutes left to speak on the whole item, and Councillor Dixon has his right to speak at the end, and obviously Councillor Cushion has his right to finish off. Okay. So very briefly, Councillor Shires.
I will be brief, much to the delight of my colleagues. I just want to reassure opposition that standing with your peers and having your peers vote as to whether or not you take a place on cabinet is not very comfortable, but we uphold democracy. And I would just like to add that it is perfectly natural for people's feelings to be hurt if they're not appointed to cabinet.
Thank you. Councillor Kershaw, again, the same thing. Be brief,
I will keep this brief. I'd just like to respond to the accusation that the cabinet are not open. I've never found that to be the case. The only time that information hasn't been distributed is when it is of a personnel issue, which is confidential, and that's right and proper. And secondly, I'd just like to mention that quite a lot of our time has been taken in putting situations right that have been left over, like getting rid of the Shannocks, supporting the outdoor activity centres, even though we worked with our MP to get government support, it wasn't forthcoming. And these are really important issues for the welfare and mental health of children, and they're going to need that help. So I don't believe, I think we've put things right that needed to be put right, and I think we are on track. And I find the opposition motion actually quite facile. And once the government's got its house in order, perhaps they can come back another time. Thank you.
Councillor Kershaw. I believe it's Councillor Cushion, then Councillor Dixon last. Is that correct? Oh, sorry, the other way around. Councillor Dixon, you're right to speak. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Mr. Chairman, so what's this all about? Well, none of us liked being treated unfairly. And had the leader's speech mentioned those things that haven't gone so well alongside the successes, I doubt we would be having this discussion this evening, even though such a speech wasn't normally the done thing at the AGM. So this is about ensuring we see both sides of the coin. Yes, it's right to recognise and even celebrate successes, but it's equally right that we recognise those things which haven't gone well and take actions and learn from them to move on. So let's do some straight talking. So why have so much secrecy? Why so little openness? I'm not saying that there is no openness, but there are certainly examples of there being very little openness on some matters. Why must I repeatedly learn of important North Norfolk District Council announcements in the Eastern Daily Press? We've already heard some of them. Well, I can add the sale of the Parklands at Pudding Norton and the delayed opening of the reef at Sheringham to the list. This isn't about contesting the reasons behind them. It's about being open and respecting member protocols. Why have so many full council motions been about tokenistic politics? Because that's what they are if we aren't following up promptly with actions which benefit the North Norfolk residents. There's a raft of them to choose from, but perhaps the best example was that of extolling the Nolan principles running through the Code of Conduct. Yet this administration so often falls short of them, as already mentioned. Now, that's hypocrisy, and we have to do better than that. Why has this organisation lost so much momentum capacity, respect and morale following the capability review in 2019.
Point of order, that's I'm sorry, but I take exception for my councillors to one of the comments you've just made, councillor. And I would ask you to retract it, please.
Mr. Chairman, the statement stands. I don't see any reason why that should be the case. It simply didn't need to be done that way. We are all paying the price, and it will take a while to yet resolve the self-inflicted consequences.
Councillor Dixon, I'll just refer to the monitoring
I
officer.
think there was a question as to whether the statement was defamatory at this stage. I can't see that there was anything in there that was specific in regard to a specific member. There is some leeway to put forward challenging views as long as it's not a personal comment.
Thank you. Councillor Dixon, we have 1 minute left on the entire item. So could you please, if possible, sum up to allow Councillor Cushing to finish
1
off?
minute.
Hang on. Sorry.
Can I move a procedural order that we suspend standing orders and give this another 10 minutes? Do I have a seconder for that?
Is there a second? Councillor.
I think in the spirit of openness, we ought to at least have the opportunity to carry on this discussion.
Okay, so there's a proposer, thank you, and there's a second from Councillor Vardy, and then we need a vote on that. So those in favour of suspending standing orders? Eleven. Those, okay. Those against suspending standing orders? Okay, so that motion is that falls. Yeah. Councillor Dixon, if you could please summarise as briefly as possible, please. Thank you.
I will. I think I'll probably use that, Mr. Chairman, as the best example of non-openness that I could possibly point out. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll move straight to my conclusion, really. I think I wouldn't expect any leader speech to set out as much detail as we have this evening in rebalancing the picture the leader portrayed on the 28th of May. However, it would have been acceptable to at least acknowledge that we could have done better and that there are many lessons to learn. They are woven into the recommendations before us, and I ask members to reflect on that rather than party unity when casting their votes tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Going to move to Councillor Cushing. I'll allow you a discretionary period, obviously, to summarise. Could I please respectfully ask the two items, one is to full council, one is to cabinet, that we separate those on a vote? Is that okay?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Cushing. Councillor Cushing.
How long have I got, Mr. Chair? Just,
the discretion.
I'll try and keep. I'll keep
discretionary
it.
period.
I'll keep it brief.
Councillor Cushing.
I shall try and keep it brief, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Just reflecting, I listened to Councillor Butikoff's rather weak response, and she referred to her group standing orders, which I'm very familiar with, because I've actually got a copy of them. And I'm also aware you do actually elect your cabinet members, but I think it's probably pushing credibility to say that I suspect, given their devotion to you, that they probably vote in the manner of the candidates that I suspect you want to be in the cabinet. So I think that's probably the that. Are we interrupted? I've heard members. I'm glad you brought up the Sheringham Reef project. Obviously, members here obviously forget that actually that was originally a Conservative project, on which we have supported generally through to conclusion. In terms of that, I was rather bemused by Councillor Seawood inviting me to North Walsham. I'd be delighted to come to North Walsham. I'd be very delighted to come and invite you to come to Fakenham, the second largest market town in the district, fares nowhere near as well in terms of funding that's being given to it compared to North Walsham, Sheringham and Cromer. I think at the moment we've got very little. I think the main thing we've got in mind is actually a renovated public convenience, I think, to look forward
Councillor
to.
Cushion, could we
But
try and
anyway,
wrap this one up,
we
please?
can discuss that one with him offline. I have to say the intervention by Councillor Heyman was actually quite jaw-dropping. Now, we have a perception of a dysfunctional way that this administration works. We've heard it from the inside now that all of our worst fears have actually been confirmed. So I thought, now I would say,
Councillor Cushion,
I
can we
will
wrap
fit
this up?
one final flourish, Mr. Chairman, if I may, and then I will finish.
Thank you.
I would say this. Conservative Party potentially has probably a reputation for at times being fairly ruthless with its leadership. I have to say I don't see any such mettle in the Liberal Democrats from a political perspective. It's I'm sure it certainly benefits us to keep this present leader and cabinet in place. We're now in the second half of this administration. We're working towards the election of 2023. The way you're going, I have to say there's going to be plenty of ammunition for us to go at you. And I look forward to that point where I'd expect to see the election of a Conservative administration. There.
Okay. Councillor Cushion, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
So we have a proposal. Councillor Cushion has agreed to my request that we separate these two parts. I believe that's correct, Councillor Cushion. You've agreed to separate the two, yeah. Lovely. So we have a proposer and a seconder from Councillor Dixon. So I'd like to take a vote. Show of hands, please, for those in favour. And this is for point 1 only. Those in favour. Those against. Abstention. Thank you. So that has that's fallen then. Yeah. Okay. And then Councillor Cushion, respect, could we take 2, 3 and 4 en bloc? Is that okay? Thank you. And are you happy for yourself and Councillor Dixon to propose in second? Councillor Dixon, you're happy with that? Yeah. And so again, a show of hands, and this is proposing that leader reports back to next meeting as outlined in the document. Those in favour? Those against? And any abstentions? So that's that one's fallen as well. Thank you, Councillor Cushion and Councillor Buttigieg, and those who took part in that debate. Thank you. Moving on to item 8. Moving on to item 18, which is a notice of motion proposed by Councillor Toy and seconded by Councillor Rest. Councillor Toy, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Plan White Paper and subsequent planning reforms bill started its journey with me within days of my taking over the planning enforcement portfolio. Many concerns were raised and responses submitted to the White Paper, and thankfully some have been heard. For example, the plan changes to a minimum number of houses being built to supply affordable housing proposed to rise from 10 to 40. This would have removed many of the affordable houses shown in my report tonight. Consultation and responses are essential. If we do not retain the ability to consult at all stages, then it is quite possible that in a few years' time, developments like North Walsham West will continue without further public engagement. However, the weakening of residents' rights to retain a voice over planning remains, and last month the House of Commons called on the government to protect residents' rights to retain a voice over planning applications. I believe this council has a strong record on listening to public opinion and views, and the many consultations carried out are a testament to this, and that is why we must be clear that the proposed changes are not acceptable to our residents. I believe that it is essential that local communities have a voice over what is happening in their area and that this right is not eroded. Therefore, I urge you to support the following motion. North Norfolk District Council believes that planning works best when developers and local communities work together to shape local areas and deliver necessary new homes. And therefore call on our local MPs, Duncan Baker and Jerome Mayhew, and the government to protect the right of communities to object to individual planning applications. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, councillor Toy. I'll move to councillor Rest as the seconder.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a small statement, really, that when I first read this government paper, my immediate reaction was, well, this might make my job a bit easier. Like most of you, I receive between 6 and 8 applications a month from planning in my ward. Some of these are followed up by the applicant or constituents with concerns, asking for support, or just advice on how they can go ahead and express their views. I didn't go into local politics to make life easy for me. Believe it or not, I was hoping to make it easier for other people. The planning bill will strip away the democratic rights of people to voice their concerns about the potential planning issues in their neighbourhood. Ask yourself why. Is it our opinions aren't valued? Is it NIMBY that's still around? Or is it that the local views are just not important? If the government want more homes built now, then force developers who have full planning permission to get on with it. Well, I've sacrificed the easier job for the one that challenges undemocratic decisions like this. Please vote for this amendment.
Thank you, councillor Rest. Councillor Grove Jones wishes to speak.
Yes, now, as you know, I'm chair of the Development Committee, and I fully endorse John and John have said about this particular motion. Development Committee is based finally on local opinion and discussion regarding planning applications in their area, in their ward. My ward, Stalham, can be extremely controversial. We're having a little spat at the moment with one or two of the parish councils. It's controversial with regards to planning applications and local development. Now that's the important thing, the local development as well, looking at economic development and residential. Any government decision to alter the status quo would be liable to cause great unrest, not just in our district council area, but throughout the country. Plus, I think a loss of respect and trust in national and local government. That's succinct enough for me, I think.
Councillor Jones, thank you. Councillor Hart.
These problems here with the fact that the sport are often showing finally excuse the board to avoid that perception of destruction beyond our concern. Long-term needs and expectations are really considered. These are not cannot be accepted. Water, first and foremost, we need to be able to Mr. Chair, we can't allow a situation where other
Thank you. Any more councillors as well? Councillor Fitzpatrick Bardi, then Dixon.
Yeah, take this off so everyone knows who I am. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, that was a joke. That's why I'm not down on the Cromer Pier, unless I had a brush in my hand if I was on the stage. But hey, And that was a joke as well, but obviously, hey, it wasn't wasted. Thank God someone's got a sense of humour apart from me, or maybe it's just as warped in mine. Anyway, sorry, this is just flannel, isn't it? This is just one of these virtue signalling motions. That the only one, you know, what's been said, the only one that's actually spoken any sense, and that was only briefly, was Councillor Rest when he said, force developers to get on with it. Because we all know that there's a problem with all these houses not built up. So rather than just to score cheap points off our two MPs and try and broil them into something on what's a white paper, why wasn't that the substance of the motion? But then, hey, that wouldn't have scored points off the MP. So I'm not going to support this because it's just an empty motion and a waste of space. Thank you.
Councillor Fitzpatrick, do you have the right, obviously, to make an amendment to the motion? Do you wish to do so?
No, because I don't think the motion should be brought in the first place. I wouldn't amend what I think is a flawed motion.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Councillor Bard.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, actually, I think I agree with many of the sentiments of this motion. But I'm grateful that our MP, Duncan Baker, has been tireless in its efforts to create some changes from what was the consultation paper, which has now been formulated into a draft paper for further submissions to local government. This has already been through your governances here some time ago, so it's already been aired, if you like. I do think, and I think that, and I agree with the principle that planning should be plan-led and not developer-led. So on that principle, that I shall probably be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vardy. Councillor Dixon, then we'll try and wrap this up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this motion is premature, and I doubt whether either of our MPs would support any changes which would deprive communities of the right to object to individual planning applications. The bill has yet to be published, and thus this is speculative. However, I am surprised the motion only mentions new homes and not sustainable employment, opportunities, or infrastructure, when there's wide recognition that they are equally important. I would have thought Councillor Kershaw would have wanted to include those. I don't seek to amend the motion simply because as I've said, the motion is premature and speculative. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Rest didn't reserve the right to speak. So Councillor Toy has presented and proposed, unless you have anything final to say.
Yeah, just a small amount if I may, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate time's cracking on. Yeah, I mean, in terms of, yes, it's not come forward yet. We can't wait until the decision's made. We need to make representations. We didn't like it before. We don't like it now. This is the same motion in effect with the words added that has gone through Parliament. It is universally supported across parties. And this government continues to play with the planning system. Yet today we've had documents come out where they talk about beauty and they're changing the NPPF. They're just playing with it, but based on people in offices in London. I mean, the suggestion about building beautiful properties suggests we've not been doing it for years here. So there is much more to do. And as regards the other, subjects like, business development, things like that, they are separate subjects. This is about how we build houses in the future. And that's why it's new homes. It's not about second homes, it's about planning. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Toy. So we'll now move to the vote. We've got a proposal and a second. Those in favour? Those against? And abstentions? Okay. So the motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 19, exclusion of press and public. I don't believe we need to do that. No private business.